the difficulty in letting go. And I don't think that just goes for sports. And I think you and I can probably relate from sports and me from SWAT. The finality, like making the decision, whether it's made for you or not. And I think in both of our cases, it wasn't made for us. I was basically removed from SWAT for tenure, and you were, let go from the CFL in whatever manner that happened. That's hard. That is hard to deal with, and to almost try to find a new identity. Did you find that was a struggle back then?
Oh man, it was an incredible struggle because, as you say, it was somebody else making the decision for me, so it wasn't on my terms. I thought I was still able to play. I had guys that played in the CFL that I trained with in the off season that said, "Man, I can't figure out how come you're not playing." So these things kind of hold into your head. You live it a little bit too much, I think. And in retrospect, it took me a while to sort of say, "Okay, that's over. What's next?" It took me a lot longer to figure out what did I learn that I can really use.
All right, welcome everybody to the Tango1 Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Smith. My co-host, Mike DeFazio, is on his maternity leave, so I'm taking advantage of that time to hook up with some friends and connections from across the country and get on a couple of Zoom podcasts with some people that I've had lined up for a little while. And today I'm welcoming aboard Tim Kist. Tim is, he's a man of multi-talent, so we're going to get on this. He's got quite the story. We connected real shortly for about half an hour, and I was like, stop talking. I need you on the podcast. I don't want to learn any more about you because your story's so awesome. Tim guides leaders to take the guesswork out of implementation of plans. I can't speak, but hopefully Tim can. And we're here to talk about everything that Tim does with his TK3 Consulting and just your personal life in general, Tim. So thanks for coming on, man.
Tony, thanks for the invite. This is outstanding. I'm really looking forward to spending more time with you. That short call you had for us just wasn't quite enough because as much as you were asking me questions, I was learning about you. So looking forward to this chat today.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. And we have like tons in common. You're a football guy. You played in the CFL, yeah?
I did. Yeah.
When was
Short
that?
time, but I was there. Yep.
When was that?
Back in 1981.
1981. And you played for?
The Montreal Alouettes.
That's awesome, man. And then you're still holding true as a Alouettes fan, I see.
I am. It was when you don't make it as long as you want your career to be, you have some reticence, I guess, to a little extent. And I had a few other kicks at the can, didn't work out, so we moved on. I let things hang on for a little too long, but now that I'm back at it, yeah, I'll cheer for the Owls first and foremost.
Yeah, we were talking about that, and I think that some of the similarities maybe you and I had too is like the difficulty in letting go, and I don't think that just goes for sports. And I think you and I could probably relate from sports, and me from SWAT. The finality of like making the decision, whether it's made for you or not. And I think in both of our cases, it wasn't made for us. I was basically removed from SWAT for tenure, and you were, let go from the CFL in whatever manner that happened. That's hard. That is hard to deal with, and to almost try to find a new identity. Did you find that was a struggle back then?
Oh man, it was an incredible struggle because, as you say, it was somebody else making the decision for me, so it wasn't on my terms. I thought I was still able to play. I had guys that played in the CFL that I trained with in the off season that said, "Man, I can't figure out how come you're not playing." So these things kind of hold into your head. You live it a little bit too much, I think. And in retrospect, it took me a while to sort of say, "Okay, that's over. What's next?" It took me a lot longer to figure out what did I learn that I can really use, because when you think of how many people actually get a chance to put on the jersey and play in a game at the CFL level and get paid to do that in front of fans, even if it was one game, for me, it was 8, I guess I played in total, exhibition and regular season. I played in front of my hometown fans here in Winnipeg. So you get all excited and jacked up to come only to lose the game 58-2. We got hammered. Here's the funny thing. I'm going to roll for just a second, Tone. Years later, I'm working for a cable TV company, and one of the guys comes into my office. I was the director of sales and marketing. He says, "Turn it to channel," I think it was like 67, just an in-house channel. He says, "We got something to show you." So I'm sitting in my office, turn on the TV channel, and it is an ESPN broadcast. The Montreal Alouettes visiting the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
No way.
These guys had taped the game. I got a chance to watch myself on TV on ESPN as we got smashed by the Blue Bombers. It was one of those, oh my gosh, look, there's me. Oh my gosh, we were bad, but holy smokes, look, there's me. It was hilarious. Like the fact that these guys had kept it, 10 years after the fact was amazing enough. But just, it was one of those things where you go, how many other guys had a chance to do that? And it took me a little bit longer after that to realize, okay, you got to a point that not very many other people do. What do you learn from it? And how do you roll with things going forward? How can you share it, the experience? How can you build something else in yourself? And I think it's some of that self-reflection that it comes later on, and maybe it's age and wisdom, whatever that adage is. We get too soon old and too late smart. I think my dad had that on his little saying thing in his workshop. And it's true. I mean, the older you get, the smarter you were, or smarter you are rather. And it's just one of those things where you go, what did I really learn from that? And then I've tried to apply it in other situations where you're more aware of it. And I think that level of self-awareness that comes in is really kind of a cool thing to get at some point in your life. I'm a slow learner, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. I agree. I think like in terms of masculinity, and a lot of things that I teach with some of the leaders I work with is that like self-awareness is such an important problem, is such an important key pillar of, of us as leaders, as us as men, if you not that, just in our role as leaders in families. And, and like you said, that the adage, and I read it once as, you go from being the cub to the warrior to like the lion, the king, and then you become more of the monk as you start to roll. And your term in that lion position is very short, right? Where I'm
Oh
finding
yeah.
it, and I find that I'm, you're starting to be, I'm so much calmer with situations now, and I'm also like a lot more empathetic and a lot more even passive in a lot of ways. I very rarely do you see me getting in on the football sidelines with my kids. Some people are losing their minds to the refs. I have it takes a lot for me to lose my temper in situations now. It's funny how you change. And I found that with SWAT with me, and as a football player too, when I was transitioning from, I got hired. I won the national championship in the Canadian Junior League on Saturday, and Monday I started my first day in the police department. And I still had 1 year of eligibility left. And I was a pretty good player. And some of my friends were moving on to college and pursuing their dreams, like other, American college and stuff, since with our proximity to the border. And I was still like kind of chasing that dream, but I'm also starting my other dream all at once. And it was like, I'm a football player, and then I was a SWAT guy, but now I'm Tony Smith. I feel like that's kind of like the maturation that I've gone through in my life. And you know what? I'm sure you felt that as a football player, especially when you took it to even the next level of that game.
Oh, for sure. And it's sort of, it defines you. And I think that was one of the challenges that I had was when I didn't have the long career, I was sort of defined as the football guy. And when I wasn't the football guy anymore, it was like, so what am I? Well, I was a Bachelor of Commerce honors graduate from the University of Manitoba. I had great marks in marketing, which is what I've done for most of my career. I then transitioned into rugby. And I played high level rugby. I played on the provincial rugby team for a bunch of years. I played on a team that won the provincial championship. So I still had that competitive edge. And it was more, as you talk transition, you know, cub to leader to the pride leader to the monk afterwards. It's part of that transition where you go, okay, what did I learn here that I can still do? I still like the physical competition. I still liked to train back then. I loved, lifting heavy weights and running fast. And I wish I could do that now, but that's a different story for a different conversation. But it's how business has rolled too. And I think, you say now you're Tony Smith. When I became comfortable being, and now I'm Tim Kist, and what did I learn and how can I share? I think it was just a different level of interaction that I had with people as well too. I didn't have to prove anything to anybody. And in life, you only got to prove it to yourself anyways.
Yeah, and our connection, the person who connected us, Sean Bacon, and what he, preaches is being uncommon. And really being uncommon is leading into like, you're Tim Kiss, I'm Tony Smith, and what do we offer others? How can we? And like what you said in our previous conversation, which really hit home, was like how you're looking always to help. Like, and the first thing, like within 10 minutes of getting off the call with you, it felt like you had sent me an email. But one that made me feel spectacular about myself, was like very complimentary. But then you also gave me like 4 references of like things that I could use. And one was a software app, you know,
Yeah.
and I went and downloaded that, and I'm using it right away. And you gave me a book that I've already downloaded. I'm making a long drive to Florida for my parents, shipping my parents' van up to Florida for them, and I'm the shipper. So I'm going to listen to that book while I drive. And that, I really appreciate those types of people. And not once in there did you say, "Hey, could you do this for me?" Like, I just really appreciate that kind of person. And that's how you really, I can see that's how you build your connections. Is you're the guy that it's like, how can I help you? And you should introduce yourself to this guy. And I love that about you.
Well, yeah, and thanks. And again, let's give credit to Sean for putting us together on this one. But I think I'd also like to, when Sean does something like that, it makes you think a little bit and say, okay, there's obviously something that I can add. And this connection is another one of them that I'm happy to have in my calendar, in my Rolodex. So one thing that I've learned, I've been very fortunate in my career, both as a player, as a coach at different levels, and guys I've coached with in business. I've had mentors. I've got people now that, one guy from the consulting perspective, he's been a mentor of mine for over 30 years. And we still get in touch regularly. Like every month I write an article for the Winnipeg Free Press. This guy takes a peek at it, offers some suggestions. I mean, who does that? So I've been so fortunate to have people like that in my life, that I feel like I like coaching, I like teaching, I like working with people. What can I offer? And if there's something that I can offer, I feel someone did something for me. Boy, I'd love to just do something for someone else. And it makes you feel good. And yeah, I guess I don't expect or don't ask anything right away, because if somebody says thanks and they offer something back, then great. And if they don't, we've got a connection. Let's just keep rolling with that. It's like friends that you don't see for a while, and then you get together again, and it's as if a week has transpired, not a year. It's pretty magical when you get to that point.
Yeah, and that part of feeling good for doing something with others, I think that comes a lot. And we talked about, because my little boys are playing football and you're big, and I don't want to make this a football podcast by any means, but I think like, do you find that a lot of that came from, I mean, the physicality, the discipline, the planning, the selflessness of that game, to lay a block for somebody else, or to even contain the edge so somebody else can make a tackle. Really, like, there's so many thankless things that go on in a football game for that one player to score a touchdown. And I think like, and that, as a lineman, or as even the receiver setting the edge for a running back to take it to the corner and take it to the end zone. When you see that happen for the other guy, you are just as excited as when you score the touchdown yourself. And I really think that game really helps to build on. And you talked about your ability to take criticism, like suggestions, as an accomplished man with all kinds of like your own achievements, to have somebody else be like, "Hey, I read your article. What do you think about adding this or this to it?" Or maybe, like, that takes a lot to like have the pride, or swallow the pride enough to read that and take that for what it's, the value that comes with that criticism.
Oh, listen, and I'd be lying, Tony, if I didn't say there's times in my life when I've been justifiably corrected, let's say, from a
Same,
person
same.
I reported to, and it didn't bite me. And yet years later, I look back on and go, son of a gun, that person doing that for me at that time has actually made me better now, because I pulled my head out of my hind end and realized, yeah, they saw something that I didn't see. And then when I saw it and grabbed a hold of it, it was so much better. And, there's like a couple of guys I worked for that made me work harder than anybody else. But it's because of that I got better at what I'm doing now. If it wasn't for those types of situations, I wouldn't be where I am now. To tie it quickly back to football, I think I didn't probably recognize it right off, but when you talk about it, like you and I are, football's the greatest team game there is, because like in basketball, anybody can score, and it's set up that way. Hockey, the same thing, except for the goalie, obviously. Soccer, same thing. Football, linemen aren't designed to score, and it's, you look at it and say everyone's got a defined job and role. It's actually the best team game, and it's important for people to be selfish in their personal preparation. In other words, you and I are on the same team. I'm going to be as best prepared as I can to do the job, whatever position I'm in, expecting and being confident that you're going to do the same, so that together we now have a better team because we've prepped selfishly to be the best we can be, but then collegially, we're the best we can be on a team. And when you start to have success doing that, it's magical. I mean, I didn't play on any championship football teams. I played on some good ones, but not some championship ones. Played on a championship rugby team, and that was the case in that. I've coached teams that have done very well, youth teams that won the provincial championship. Coached at university when we made it to the national semifinals. And every game we won and building up to that point, even though we lost in it, it's magical. And it's just something about being around everybody and seeing everybody give everything they have for that time. It's a piece that I think probably, lament might be too strong a word, but it's something that in my consulting practice, I take that and try and apply it into business and say, man, do you guys really want to be the best you can be? I'm not, and this is not a diss at anybody. I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad. It's just not every organization really truly wants to be the best from top to bottom. It's because a lot of people have stuff going on in their life. Good is good enough in many cases, again, work 30 years, whatever, and then retire. But how many people want to lead a SWAT team? How many people want to play professional sports? How many people want to do a podcast where they're interviewing people? Not that many. So what is it that sets you apart? I think it's a collection of everything that we've experienced in our life gets us to the point we are today.
Yeah, mental toughness, consistency, and follow through. And I think that's a lot to it. And the fact, like you said, is people maybe thinking that's what they want, but not understanding that they can't have the open conversations in a room that are necessary. Me going one-on-one with a defensive back on our own team 6 days a week so that I can play one game. And
Yeah.
when I get in that game, it's easier than the practice was because he was giving me everything and he was the best player on the field, and now
Yeah.
he's on my team on Sunday or Saturday, whatever day it is that you play. But that's the kind of like mentality I always tried to bring to that SWAT team. And I had an old sergeant, he put it in such a beautiful way. He goes, this team is like Survivor Island, man. You want to work so hard because at the end of every day, you don't want to get voted off. And
Yeah.
like, this is life and death here, and the NFL or the CFL or professional sports. And I really think businesses, you should work so hard because you're worried if we get voted off, because we're really there to win. And you can't always cut the weakest link. We want to rise that weakest link up. But at certain points when the weakest link isn't willing to do what they need to do, then we need to replace it or meld it in some kind of way. And I think that was a great way to look at it. And that when we go in and work with businesses, and I've gone in with Sean and stuff on my own before, was having those conversations. And we're sitting in a room and somebody said to me, well, isn't this going to hurt somebody's feelings? I go, oh yeah, that's kind of the point. Like it's to start to learn that, like, whatever we say in this room, it's not sent to be mean. It's said to be with love and and for the true value of the team. That's what coaching is. Like, coaching is correction, acknowledgement, knowledge. It's so many different things, but it's not sensitive. It shouldn't be sensitive. We're just wasting time if we're making it sensitive. Just say what we need to say and let's move on. And if you can be coached like that, you're gonna rise so much faster. And there's certainly times when I've taken offense to things, and probably not rightfully so, like you mentioned, but I think that's where we're getting around here in my gym. And I think that's why we've really started to do well lately. And I think that's why even my little league teams succeed, because we've had that from day one. It's like, hey, this is coaching. We're not saying it to be mean. I'm not yelling. I'm pointing out something. I'm not saying please. I'm not saying, hey, one of you guys dropped the ball. No, Tim dropped the ball today.
Yeah.
And we can all learn from what Tim did. if we can say it directly and use that example.
And that's a great example too. It's like, yeah, it's the classic, I'm going to praise in public and correct in private, but sometimes you got to correct in public. Okay. And on this play, Tim, your drop as a linebacker put you in the wrong spot. You took the wrong angle, you read the wrong thing, whatever it was. While they're using Tim as the example, anybody who plays that position is going to know, okay, now I know what to do correctly. And to your point about this correction thing, I'm correcting the performance. I'm not taking a shot at the person. I'm saying your performance, your actions need to change so we get a different result. I haven't said anything negative about you. I'm trying to help you. I mean, when you're doing this to help someone do things the right way, you are helping them. I want you to succeed. The worst thing is to spend so much time on all the bad stuff that's going on. I want a team that is trying to do things, trying to make stuff happen, because it's way better to just steer the rocket rather than have to light it.
Yeah.
So we want to get everybody going. Yep, I screwed up on that one, but I know what to do. Great. I got your back, or as Sean says, I got your six.
Right.
And then we just keep moving forward, onward.
And
Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah. And the buy-in from that comes from in public, then in that loss, in that defeat, in that failure. Ultimately, why I was coaching you up for dropping the ball was because ultimately I'm the head coach. I'm the boss of this gym or whatever you might be doing. And ultimately, I put you in that position. I didn't properly train you. There's something I didn't provide you, and I'm trying to provide it now. And then when we stand out in the public, it's, no, the team failure because I didn't have them prepared. Right?
Yes.
In front of them during defeat and beside them, behind them during victory is the best way to stand, in my opinion. That gets so much leadership, because then when you're the one who fails, when you're the one who messes up and you stand up to take it, that team just stands up right there next to you. And that's where you get the buy-in.
100%. There's two things that come to mind on that one. Number one is the stoic approach that the obstacle is the way. So, and this took me a while to figure out too, that if, it's not someone else's fault, it's mine. Even though you might look at it as objectively as possible and go, darn it, it's the other person's fault. No, let me change things. Let me look at this a different way. It's like my wife had one of the best lines ever. We were having a discussion, and I guess my voice got a little loud, which it can be from time to time. And she just calmly looks at me. She says, don't raise your voice, improve your argument. And you go, okay, I got nothing else to add there, honey, but you are absolutely correct. I've used that with clients for years, and it works. It helps diffuse the situation, and it forces people to think. Tie that back into the coaching thing. As the head coach, you are the effective point of accountability for that organization at that point in time with the players. So it's your responsibility. If you say we didn't do well on that play, I've got to accept that I didn't coach you up properly. I didn't have my assistant coaches ready to do what was necessary. I didn't get you players ready, either mentally or physically, to be successful in that game. Bear in mind, just like business, we're doing all these things to get ourselves better. So's the competition. They got people sitting in the lab trying to invent new products that are going to one up everybody else. It's going to be the newest, latest, greatest. So how do we keep this thing going? You can't stand still in business, or you're going to get passed by everybody.
Yeah, what you said there was, if every leader, you're the top of that pyramid in leadership, and every sub leader, right down to the the person who emptied the garbage, took that very same approach to the mistake that happened, the error that happened, the whatever it was, the obstacle that didn't get cleared. If everybody took that approach to it, that, oh, that's my fault, and how could I make that problem go away? Who can I go help? What can I do for myself to make this not happen again? You've created leadership at every level. And that makes decisions decisions are happening so much faster because they're not coming up to you, because you've got these leaders at every level that are taking ownership of it. I think that's the ultimate goal, in my opinion, of any business that I work with, and definitely my own business. Does it happen all the time? Absolutely not. But that is the ultimate goal.
Right, because you can't do it all. Leaders of an organization can't do it all. So we need buy-in from everybody on the team, whatever that team is, business or sports. It's it's getting people comfortable with taking and accepting that responsibility, encouraging them and supporting them so that they will lead and go forward like that. I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Leadership Challenge. It's in its, I don't know, 35th or 40th edition or something. These two professors, Cousys and Posner, have done the research every year. And they've had the best definition of leadership I've ever come across, which is a leader is someone others willingly follow. And it can be at any level of the organization. And when you think about it, if you've got a team and there's somebody, it's not positional authority and leadership that they're given. It's something that they earn and demonstrate. You read stories about fighting units in World War II and things like that, where it's the sergeant that led them. It wasn't the general. The general was given directions from the back, but it was the sergeant at the front lines leading the platoon that was having the success that helped win the war. And it's like that in any organization. You're going to have key people. The guys go, I don't want to be the CEO because look at all the headaches you got. But I love what I'm doing. And I know that I can make a difference. And the people around them go, I want to follow you because I trust you. I believe in you and I see the results. I want to be part of that.
Absolutely. Rank doesn't make leadership, right? Rank can definitely position you to be in a better, spot for leadership.
Yeah.
But it does not create leadership. It's not a given that comes with that rank. And I mean, that was evident in the police department. There were some incredible leaders who held rank, and there were some who had no leadership and basically had no followers, right? Nobody was following. All they had was the rank to fall on to get people to do what they needed to do. And, when people aren't believing in the mission, it's just not going to happen.
That's a huge one. Believing in the mission. It's similar to a phrase one of my mentors in business had used. He said it was, great marketing begins at home. What he meant by that was, and we were in a marketing department for a large national broadcast organization, but anytime we were doing anything, sales campaign with the sales team, promotion campaign for new shows, whatever it was, people inside the company need to know all about that. What I learned from a different work situation was people also need to understand how my job fits into the delivery of whatever it is that you're doing. How does my little part as a receptionist, a warehouse worker, uh, shift supervisor, whatever you might think as a lower level organizationally, but the huge impact you can have with every customer that you talk to, every supplier that you talk to, anybody else that you represent outside of the company. You got your garage gym jersey on, you walking down the street, people notice it. Are you showing the right kind of behavior to be a proud member of the garage gym? Or are you doing something where people go, oh man, what an idiot. I hope the rest of the people at garage gym aren't like that. That's a hypothetical, buddy. I know you're not like that. So, and it ties in with something that people need to think about. And I think if you're really self-aware, it's like, if I do this, how will it affect the people around me? In other words, think before you act. So if you and I are going out, and should I have 6 drinks and then make an idiot of myself? I'm going to embarrass Tony. I'm going to embarrass myself. I'm going to embarrass whoever else we're around. I shouldn't have 6 drinks. If whatever it is you're doing at work, well, if I do this, I run the risk of something negative happening. Yeah, I probably shouldn't do that. Like just that pause and thinking about that. So you're not thinking of yourself necessarily. You're thinking of what could this do for somebody else that's in my sphere of influence, or, to my friends. Am I going to do or say something that's going to, impact the friendship that we have? And I think sometimes, unfortunately, we don't do that. I know a younger Tim would certainly say or do something and then regret saying or doing it later and go, I shouldn't have done that. and in work, it's the same thing. Well, should I do this? Should I slack off? Well, if you don't get it done today, it's still got to get done. So if you don't do it today, it's got to get done tomorrow. Come on, Sparky, buckle up and get her done.
Yeah, there's such a fine line between like you're learning from your mistakes, you're gonna make mistakes, to like you're making too many mistakes. And how are and I learned there's a bunch of different ways to lead, and rebel leadership is one of them, and it's one of the most effective manners of leadership, but also it's one of the ones that is the quickest to turn over, where it's like, okay, your rebel leadership, you rose up by, speaking up against the man or whatever that is, and whatever. But however, quickly gets old to the followers, right? Because I think with that rebel leadership is that warrior that, that like, I'm going to say some things that are going to ruffle some feathers. And at first it gains a lot of respect, a lot of traction. It makes a lot of difference. And then soon it's like, hey, we're there now. You need to like kind of change your leadership style, and you need to start being more of a diplomatic leadership, more of a, example leader, and things like that. So I think there's definitely like a lot of strategy in that. That's been a huge learning curve in my life, because I'm pretty sure I know how I started in leadership.
Oh, I can definitely tell you how I started, and it wasn't always the right way to do it. But when I listen to that, I think of one particular situation. I was coaching with the University of Manitoba, and one of my main responsibilities was coaching the scout team. So our defense would run the team that we were playing that weekend. We would run the schemes so that our offense knew what it was going to be like to run against the schemes of the defense of the team they were playing. And we're doing inside run drill where it's the linemen and linebackers. It's the running game. So there's a lot of hitting going on. Big game coming up. It was the year that we were making the run to the national semifinal, and practice was not going well. And our guys were not doing well on defense. They were not listening. They were not working hard. They were not giving the offense the best picture. Coach Kist is pretty even keeled, referred to by some of the other guys as the players coach, because I was the one that put the arm around him and stuff. Well, Coach Kist snapped. We're in the Winnipeg Stadium, what's now known as the Princess Auto Stadium, because that's where we would practice. And the head coach was at the other end of the field. And Coach Doby comes over, puts his arm around me, and walks me away from the drill after I'd had my blow up at the players. And he's like, "What's going on, coach? What's going on?" And I've known Brian since like 1988. And I looked at him and smiled. I said, "So what's going on back there?" He says, "Oh, they're having a great rep right now." And I said, "It worked, didn't it?" He looks at me and he goes, "I see what you did." And it was just that one flare up to let the guys know, enough. This is unacceptable. We need to get back to what we're doing. One of the players came over to me after I had my little chuckle with Coach Doby. One of the players, David Onyemata. David is now playing for the Atlanta Falcons. He got drafted by the New Orleans Saints, played for a few years, moved over to Atlanta. David's having a heck of a career. Big Dave, 6'3", 310 pounds, comes and puts his arm around me and says, "Coach, I'm not going to let that happen again." And I just looked at him and said, "David, I know you won't, but we got to make sure everyone else is the same." He goes, "I won't let them either." And when you have business, and in business, I mean, I take pride in the fact I still got employees that worked for me decades ago that will contact me and say, "Can you be a reference?" Still. So there's something that comes with developing that good relationship and that respect. And it's calling out the performance when it needs to be called out, but being supportive there too. They're a human. My gosh, this is all about just, can we not be good humans? So yeah, I mean, it's tons. You and I could share stories like this for hours, I'm sure. And
Yeah, for sure we could.
they'd all be great. But I think it's the message that, and not that this is, we're not doing the podcast to leave you with this super serious message and stuff. It's, everybody's life is a little different. You got to learn from it. And then how do you roll going forward? Be a
Yeah.
good human.
And let's maybe shift to that, because your life, you have, I mean, the success of how long have you been doing consulting and marketing now?
Oh man, I've had my own firm for 13 years. I worked for two of the big four firms. I worked for what's now PwC and Deloitte for about 4 years each. And then I sandwiched in between the two consulting positions. I worked in business for like 20 years.
Wow. Yeah. So, I
So,
mean, you've had a successful career. You made it to the top parts of this country's football game. And like, I feel like people don't understand too, like that league, to make it in that league, you're also competing against, the country that I'm looking at through my window here. Like, because very few players make the NFL. And
yep.
then a lot of those millions of savages over there, who like incredible football players with so much resources, right? And way more teams and availability to play the game and are filtering over and taking over. So you made it to the peak of Canadian football. And then, you have a family and resilience though. We'll talk about resilience because your story, I know it's probably hard for you to talk about, but I don't think it can go without being said. Um, Tell us about your scare. I mean, more than a scare, like your diagnosis of basically your
Oof.
life was over.
Well, and it was a second scare. So, I've actually just recently written something because I was urged to or compelled to from some really close friends that said, write about it. I said, I'm not writing another cancer story. There's millions of people that have had it worse than I did. They said, no, write what you learned about it. So I switched it into leadership lessons, but the backstory is I had got diagnosed with bladder cancer 10 years ago, had surgery to remove a few things. I have a urostomy pouch. Pushed past that, started playing basketball again, started doing hockey. Life goes on. There's some things you have to be very careful about, obviously. Wardrobe malfunctions being one of them. But you learn to adjust and adapt on that one. But 4 years ago, I was having some trouble breathing. Get in to see my doctor. She schedules me for a CT scan. Before I could even get to the CT scan, which was about 4 weeks later, I end up in the hospital. I can't breathe. They put me on oxygen, find out I got a 5-inch mass in my chest, stage 4 non-small cell lung cancer. First doctor says, get your affairs in order. You got 4 months to live. By yourself during COVID in an emergency ward. And then you go, now I got to tell my wife, phone her from the hospital and say, hi, can you bring me some clothes? I'm going to be in here for a little bit. They make special dispensation to let her come in. I literally, Tony only had a couple of minutes, sit her down in a chair. And I said, well, this is what the doctor told me. I got 4 months and now you have to leave and go home. Basically is what it was. So, she's fortunately we had a dog at the time and good old Trapper was big golden retriever and because both of our boys live in the States. So here she is. I'm in the hospital on basically at death's door and she's got to go home. The next day we start the treatments. The next day it was the first radiation blast. And so you progress through that to the point now where here I am 4 years later. And I just had a scan a couple of weeks ago, met with the oncologist. He says, yeah, I'm going to switch you up. We're only going to check your chest twice a year and only check your abdomen once a year. He says, you're now at a point where just keep going. He said, you're like the 1%. So he says, 1/3 of people that get diagnosed with a cancer like this make it to his door. 1/5 of those 1/3 make it to treatments, and only 1/5 of the 1/5 of the 1/3 make it to the point that I am now. It's the 1%. It's not the 1% I want to be in. I'd rather be in a different one, but sort of for the second time in my life, I've had a sniff at the 1%. In both cases, in a good way. The CFL, like less than 1% of males at my age at that point had a chance to play pro ball. Now I'm still kicking around here. And as I said to the oncologist, before my first grandson was born, I said, Doc, you got to keep me around because I'm going to teach my grandson how to drive. So we're 13 years closer to that.
That's incredible. And I mean, I'm sure it's hard for you to talk, but I think it's like stories like that, I think are really important for people to hear because it also sometimes lends, it's not to like take advantage of the situation or to be happy that I have it better than you, but it lends like a scale where it's like, okay, maybe I got some bad news today about something. It's like, well, I wasn't told that, or,
Yeah.
like my wife used to say to people in the gym, when she was a cop too, and I don't know if you knew that, she started as a police officer. That's how we met. And she, with other mothers, and they talk about their night and how rough it was. And she'd say, like, did you have coffee with the dead body? And because that's what she had done
Yeah.
at work today. And it just lends a different scale, a different level of like understanding, like there are things out there worse. Appreciate what you have because it could be that much worse. And for you, I don't know how it could feel worse than sitting, especially I didn't know the COVID part of it. That whole thing is crazy too. And God, imagine the families who didn't get to be there with their loved ones for their last minute. Imagine being the loved one, like being you. That I just can't imagine my father being in that situation and not being able to be surrounded by people, especially if he never came out.
Yeah. It's
It's
and it's interesting because I never thought, like, I never felt sick per se. I had the symptoms, like I couldn't breathe and I was on oxygen 24/7 for months, but I didn't have any pain. There was no physical pain. There was nothing that said, oh my gosh, this is the end of the road. Yeah, there was weakness, and I'll tell you, the radiation kicks the crap out of you, that's for sure. And then I did chemotherapy, and then I also did immunotherapy. And immunotherapy is fantastic because it's a drug that trains your body to fight the cancer cells. So you don't have to add any of the artificial stuff through the chemo or the radiation. It's an unbelievable medical advancement. It wasn't available for my first cancer. For the second one, yeah. And I've been off that one for a year now. But I spent 16 days in the hospital. For the last half of them, my wife wasn't allowed to come up because COVID got really bad on a couple of the wards, and they shut them down to anybody coming in. And to your point, I can't imagine for those people that were in a really tough situation that couldn't have a loved one come in with them. I tried to make the best of it. I was still teaching a class at the time, and while I had to stall one class, the nurses put me into an empty room, and I was able to teach a class. It was hilarious because the students were like, "Where are you?" Because it was all online anyways. And I was like, "Where are you?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm actually in a hospital." They're like, "What? What's going on?" And in between things, I'd have to put the oxygen back in my nose so that I could breathe again.
I'm
And then
picturing you with one of those gowns and like if you stood up, your butt's hanging out. Like
100%, 100%. That's exactly what it was. Oh man, it's funny. I mean, you look back now and you sort of joke about it all, but it's at the time it's there's you do a little bit of soul searching. I don't dwell on it. I didn't feel like I needed to do that. I felt like it's funny, the first cancer, when I was going in for chemo treatments, and it was a really harsh chemo drug. I remember one time looking at these poor little kids, 6, 8 years old, getting chemo and crying because of the needle going in again and stuff. And I just went, you know what, Lord, take me now. I was early 50s. I said, take me now, and keep these little guys because they'll never have a chance to do half of the stupid things that I did. But funny, this time around, the second time I went, Lord, I'm not ready to go this time. So we got to keep me around because there's still things that I know you want me to do. As I say, my grandson was soon to be born. Um, and it was like, we got to stick around for that because it's been pretty special. And I had him here for a week just a couple of weeks ago. So I still got the grandfather grin on, and we're going back at Christmas to see him. But it's something that I'm not going to say you stop and smell the roses differently, because if it took a disease like this to make me do it, shame on me for not being a better person before. But you're right, it does give you a different perspective. And so things that might have bothered me a little bit before is like, it's a thing, things can be fixed. So let's not worry about some of that stuff. It's about really taking better care of the relationships in your life. My wife and I made a pact a few years ago and said, if somebody says, hey, you want to go for a coffee or something? Yes is always the answer immediately. We'll figure out the logistics, but the answer is always yes, because you just don't know. I've lost some close friends in the last few years, and you just go, I never had a chance to say goodbye. Um, it's stuff like that you go. So then every chance I get to be with somebody, I got to be with them. You hear a lot of people talk about being present, you know, being in the moment, all that stuff. It's easy to say, but it's having that opportunity like you and I right now to have a personal conversation and to really understand your perspective and your experiences and your interest in hearing about mine. And it makes it feel like, yeah, this is time well spent. I'm glad this is in my calendar today. Have I got other stuff to do? Yeah, but right now, spending time with Tony Smith is the most important thing for me. It's really kind of cool. I like this.
Appreciate that. And I said the podcast, it started in the dark days of COVID when the gym was closed and we were breaking laws to open, and it was a very turbulent time for me. Never did I think I'd be telling my friends outside the door that they had to get a warrant if they wanted to come, and it was a challenge. And I mean, perspective, nothing like what you talked about, but the podcast was born of that. And we started to do this, it was 1 hour a week where we would shut down, and the kid who was my first co-host, Casey, and I would run, and we'd sneak a guest in, and we would basically, you shut off the lights like you see in a movie studio, and you have the bright lights on us because we do most of them live. And it was an opportunity to just disconnect and to have real conversations. And the
Yeah.
reason the podcast has continued for me is because of that. I feel like in today's world, it's very, very hard to shut down for 1 hour and do this and just talk, and there's no interruptions. I'm sure you've got your phone silenced or somewhere away. I've got my same alerts are off on my phone. You see me look over, but that's me, like, checking some things I wanted to make sure we covered today, like. But it's the conversations that happen in the podcast don't seem to happen in real life enough, and I've tried to do it more. And I've started to do something with my kids years back that a mentor taught me. They made a little box, a shoe box. It's a Nike shoe box, and they write on it mom and dad's phone box. And once in a while, once a week, usually we try. It's like, hey guys, get out the box, and we put our phones in, and they go hide it. And it's like that's like a 1 hour of completely engaged, which is so much better than 8 hours of just me kind of half engaged, doing some stuff around the house and doing some jobs and answering some emails and hanging out with them. That 1 hour is probably more valuable than the other 40 hours I spent with them in the days leading up to it.
Yeah, because just the way you described it, that's your focus. It's not the phone, it's not anything else. The focus is your kids at that point in time. I saw a great little video recently. It's an old one that resurfaced. I think it was actually Roseanne Barr interviewing um oh gosh, now I'm drawing a blank. Comedian George Carlin.
Yeah.
And George Carlin is talking about, he says, and this would be back in the 80s, I guess, maybe 90s, 80s for sure. He says, kids need some daydreaming time. He says, kids need an hour every day for nothing else around but to look out the window. He said, we make play dates. Like he says, we're scheduling all this stuff in their lives. And yeah, and you and I are people that need schedules. We've lived in businesses and lives where there is structure that way, but that unstructured element, especially for young kids, to just look outside and daydream for an hour, I think it's pretty magical. And when the grandkids were here, especially my 3-year-old grandson, his brain is just unbelievable. And the things that we did, like invented on the spot, that just I'm letting him roll with it, and I'm go. It was magical. It was absolutely wonderful. You know, he says that we have a house phone. Yes, my wife and I still have a house phone. And he was asking questions about that. And I said, okay, this is a second, Ezra. So I go running upstairs, grab my cell phone, and I phone him. And we're having a conversation on the phone. And of course, he's got to come up and see me and show me he's on the phone and he's talking to me. And my sons call me Pops. So it was the easiest thing for the grandkids too, to I'm Pops. I'm not any other grandpa. It's Pops. So he's like, hey, Pops. And he comes into our bedroom and he's talking away and sitting on the bed and telling me this and that. And he goes, let me take you to my room and we're going to show you this. And so we wander down the hall to the room that he's in. And we did this for about half an hour. It was just absolute gold. I'm telling you. So whether it's with your kids or with a friend, whatever it is, it's if it's with your employees, like how many bosses I've done this and I've suggested, I've written about this too. Listen to your employees. Don't go in, pull in executive privilege, just like you don't want to pull parental privilege, and guide the conversation. Like, Tim, zip it, open it, and just listen to people and hear what they have to say. I try and do that really with the clients that I work with. And I know it works because I've had unsolicited feedback where they say, one of the things I really like, Tim, about the way you do this is you really listen and you really synthesize it quickly to help me sort through what it is that we're talking about. So I know I need to do it better as a husband and a father. But it's, you work hard at all the different aspects of your life too, but at least I know I have the capability to do it.
Yes, for sure. There's so much carryover with all of it. And
Oh,
for some
big
reason,
time.
sometimes it's the people that closest to us that we do it the worst with.
100% again. Yep.
Yeah, we're leaving. Like I said, I'm driving the parents' van up to Florida on Thursday, so it'll be an 18 hours if we don't stop. And I'm doing it with just my two sons, and it'll be the second year in a row we do this. And you know what? Could I take another driver? Could I take a friend with me? Could I make that trip a lot easier, probably physically? Yes, but having they're locked in that car with me, and we do a rule. It's like, okay, for every 1 hour, you want to be on that screen. It's okay for them to play their little game or watch a movie, but for every hour you're on that screen, you're going to be off it for two. And during those 2 hours, at the end of the trip last year, what was happening is they were off it. They weren't even on it. They were just talking my ear off and looking out the window and seeing the mountains and asking about this city or that city and what sport team and what university and wanted to look up who played here and who was born here. And just the natural minds of those children to just start to like come up with their own stuff to keep them busy is awesome. And I think us as adults too, I'm finding I'm losing a little bit of that. And I need to get better at that. It's so easy to get consumed and let some of this technology, even AI, write emails and things that you're starting to lose your ability to create and communicate. And that's, I think, very important for all of us to shut it down and make sure that we're communicating in this kind of manner. We're
Oh,
using technology, but it's allowing us to have a great conversation.
right. It's the technology is the platform. It's not guiding us. Like, we're not saying, oh, I have to do or say this because I'm on Zoom. No, the conversation just happens because we're two human beings. We're two men that are talking about aspects of our life, aspects of our views of life. And it's aspects that it's different for everybody. I mean, I love hearing the story about you and the boys. I mean, you told me about the fishing trip and now the car trip. And I say, good on you, man, because it's really good friend of mine. His son is a really good fencer, probably be on Canada's next Olympic team. But it's his only son, and he goes to school in the States now. And my buddy always says, how do you do it? Like, I miss my kids so much. I said, are you kidding? We've been empty nesters now for 12 years, and you miss the boys incredibly because it's not like, my brother or my sister that live here whose kids are also in the same city that they can see for Sunday dinner. I get to see them on a screen. I get to see them a couple times a year in person. I miss them dearly, but it's interesting to watch them grow up at the same time. And whenever you do get that chance to get together, it's absolutely special time. It's incredibly special. So every little moment you get to do something special, take it. Take it and just smile your ass off, man. It's great.
That's great advice. That's great advice. So if you were going to leave our audience with like one book that would, maybe encompass everything that you we covered so much of it
Mm.
really, um, that you think would improve their life either all the pillars by an inch or maybe one pillar by a significant amount, what would it be? I know
Well, when you
I know you're a man of many books, so that might have put a lot of pressure on you for this one, but
Well, you did, and I know that when I filled out your form, it said don't think too hard on it. And amazingly, I mean, the first book that I thought of was the Bible. And I would consider myself a man of faith. Um, my time, wavers and certain things, but I think I would say the Bible because the stories that are in it are stories about how people have basically thrived over time, the challenges that they've faced, the challenges they've overcome, the lessons they learned, the parables, things like that. It's an exact mirror of our own life. And it shows us that each of us is capable of doing something. It's not that, you know, we all have the same cell structure, so to speak, but certain things happen in certain ways, and we got to figure out what it is that we're going to be good at and where we can add some value for other people around us. I think if you're to say, let's look at something non-religious, the next book I would suggest would be Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning.
oh, excellent book.
It's whatever it is, 147 pages or something, and of again some of the most powerful words ever written. And it wasn't about, and he even says, I'm not writing about all of the things that happened in the concentration camp. It was about what he saw and what he learned from people in those situations. And it was that concept of meaning. What is the value that we can do? You find that, and you can move mountains at that point. Think of the world. If it wasn't for the inventiveness of mankind, we would not be living in this wonderful world that we live in. Yeah, okay, there's problems. And yes, mostly man-made problems, but we get man-made solutions that are going to happen too. We've overcome a lot of things. We've overcome diseases by inventing vaccines and things over the years. We've figured out how to, clothe ourselves and feed ourselves. Billions of people on this planet. We're capable of a lot of stuff. So let's be proud and confident with who we are as individuals and surround ourselves with great people and make more connections, stay interested, and just love life. I mean, we're only here for a little bit. Let's be like the Trooper song. We'll be here for a good time because it might not be a long time, or maybe it will be a long time, but let's make sure it's a good time.
I think that's an excellent way to end things right there, man. That's such an uplifting way. That's two great book recommendations. I definitely haven't read the Bible cover to cover. Been through a bunch of it going to Catholic school for so many years, and my mom being a Catholic lady who still goes to church. But I don't think you have to look at it as a religious book either. I think you can just look at it as a book of lessons and
Yeah,
take away religion, whatever religion you practice or preach. I think many of that carries over between each other as well. Even if you're, atheist, I think still an atheist is still looking to be a great person, a good person. I hope
sure.
anybody I want to associate with at least. And then the Viktor Frankl book, man, that one is amazing. And then just your last piece on like, take it and let's live it for its best and appreciate what's here. I love it. And it's been just an honor having you on here today. And I'm looking forward to having many more chats like this and informal or formal on the podcast. And it really was the same. The last conversation we had is this conversation just awesome and enlightening. And I appreciate the connection and the new friendship.
Oh, absolutely, Tony. It's my privilege as well, and I'm so happy that Sean made the connection for us. And one of these days, my friend, it's going to be in person.
Take you up on that. So
Right
thank you
on.
everybody for listening and please like us, love us, rate us, and share this podcast when you come across it on the Tango1 Podcast. We appreciate all of you very much, and we're over and out.